Okay, so here we've got the first of today's videos. This is the public questions section of yesterday's full council meeting. These are questions asked by Rory Comyn, Lentell and Roy Stamp, and being responded to by Cllr Alex Beckett. This is just the uncut video for people who didn't get to see it live yesterday, and later on I will be doing some more analytical breakdowns of certain key moments of this debate, because there were some interesting revealing moments. But for now, here's just the questions as they were yesterday for the record.
Good afternoon, councillors. I'd like to start by saying to each and every one of you that this is a real opportunity for you to allay an unprecedented level of fear, mistrust, upset, and quite frankly, pure fury that this proposal has engendered in a population who, given recent and current events, look naturally to their elected officials for support. What concerns me and the thousands that have signed this petition is the fact that none of the councillors present here today have a mandate for imposing a congestion charge. Liberal Democrats and Labour, knowing this was in the pipeline, for some peculiar reason, all failed to mention it at the last election. And yet, here they are now, united in pushing this monstrosity forward. If I may, I would like to direct my question directly to you, Cllr Alex Beckett. You sit here as the chair of the Highways Committee, a position of importance and authority granted to you by the people. I wonder if those that put you in that seat knew about the plans you now so fervently support. My question is this, and rather like the referendum itself, I'm looking for a simple yes or no. In securing this role, did you personally include the proposal of a congestion charge in your manifesto?
Councillor Beckett.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, thank you, Mr. Comyn, for your question. I know we might not necessarily agree, but it's great to see residents engage and challenge. None of this is easy. There are difficult decisions to be made all around, but I'm really pleased to see that you are actually here today and able to bring your views. That's really important for all of us.
Thank you.
The GCP, as we all know, has carried out one of the biggest and most wide-ranging consultations in its history. It's led to over 24,000 responses. It deliberately asked a range of open and closed questions to ask people whether they supported the scheme, which elements they did support and which elements they didn't support, what they might like to see done differently, or what alternatives they proposed. This was intended to provide a richer and more nuanced feedback style than a simple yes or no. I do not believe this is a simple yes or no answer for any of this. This is a complex decision that requires complex analysis. All of us need to take a look at what the feedback to the consultation says, look at any amendments that the GCP might bring and what scheme might be brought forwards before we decide on what needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a supplementary question.
Oh, yes. Right, so that's a clear no, then. So here's the thing. It's obviously clear that the proposal of a congestion charge was not in your manifesto. So why is it subject to your party's whip? It strikes me that you do not have the right to make a decision on the matter in that case. So do you not agree that it would be moral, decent and democratic of you to either stand for election on this issue to determine whether or not you have our support, or save everybody's time by granting us a referendum today?
Thank you again, Mr. Comyn, and thank you to everyone else. I know this does invoke an awful lot of passion on everyone. I, for one, can assure you that I have not been whipped on this issue. Nobody has told me to vote one way or the other, and I very much intend to use my own moral compass and all the evidence in front of me before I make any decision on any final scheme that is passed. Now, we owe it to the 28,000 people that replied to look through those responses. We owe it to them all. We really do. To be able to set that aside would be the least democratic thing that we ever did as a council. We owe it to them. The results of the consultation will be included in a final report to the GCP scheduled for June 2023. Now, as you know, the proposals as they currently stand do not have any form of charging being implemented until 2028. There is a long time to go before this. There will be further elections for all of this. There will be many, many chances for people to have their say and to have their voices heard. Thank you.
Next up is Councillor Lentell. You have 2 minutes to ask your questions, and if you choose 1 minute for a supplementary question.
Councillors, thank you. My name is Dan, and I am the South Cambridgeshire District Councillor for Over and Willingham. Interestingly, in our neck of the woods, we've had 2 by-elections since these proposals were made. One in Longstanton, Oakington and Northstowe. That led to a 40% swing against the Lib Dems, the party I resigned from, over this issue. And last week in Cottenham, Councillor Gough's neck of the woods, another 40% swing against the Lib Dems. I wonder what came up. This is an issue that affects me as a resident of Over and Willingham, with villages which are set to be considerably worse off if Addenbrooke's is included in the zone. Also, as a South Cambs district councillor for that ward, I can see the serious damage to trust and confidence in our system that will be done if such a large innovation is done without any kind of mandate, either in a regular election or through a referendum. And I would argue that one thing that you can all do, and we can all do, to turn the temperature down and to engage properly with the debate, not hate agenda,
Councillor
is to actually debate.
Councillor Lentell, this is a question. Can you ask your question, please?
What is democratic about doing stuff to people without their consent? And what is liberal about doing stuff to people without their consent? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Beckett.
Thank you. And thank you, Dan, for bringing this question. Addenbrooke's is obviously incredibly important to all of us. It's an institution which plays such a part in all of our lives. I know myself, I have to thank the staff of Addenbrooke's for the help they've given to my family. Personally, I'll never forget having to rush my wife there from our wedding engagement party and standing by her bed for the next week as she recovered from serious illness. I'll never forget saying goodbye to one of my friends in the Papworth. I don't think I'll ever be able to thank the staff of Addenbrooke's enough for what they have done for all of us. And I think it's incredibly important that you bring these points. It's really important to all of us. The story of Transport Addenbrooke's, though, isn't so simple. Representing Queen Edith's on the border of Addenbrooke's, I know firsthand what misery inconsiderate drivers visiting the hospital can cause. Both sides willing, Councillor Lentell, I'd be willing to introduce you to the residents of Red Cross to hear their personal stories, if you wanted to. Similarly, I've heard from other residents who have had to choose between staying at the hospital for the treatment they need or catching the last bus home. We've heard from Mike Moore, the chair of Cambridge University Hospital, about the lack of public transport has on staff recruitment. All in all, transport around Addenbrooke's is a difficult issue, which requires much serious, thoughtful consideration. Serious consideration, which is often not possible given the binary and dividing nature of a referendum. The GCP has carried out the biggest and most wide-ranging consultation, as I've said before, 24,000 responses. It deliberately asked a range of open and closed questions so that those exact issues could be captured and analysed. We owe it to all of those residents to listen to all of those responses and analyse. I'm sure we'll hear much more discussions about the pros and cons of a referendum. I know I have one more question asking about it before the debate is closed, but we owe it to people to listen to what they say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lentell, you now have 1 minute to ask a supplementary question if you choose.
The M11 access corridors play absolutely no part in congestion into Cambridge. So my residents do not need to have a paywall between them and their healthcare put up by the Labour and Lib Dem councillors in this room. Charles I, that man of blood, he tried to put in a tax without consent. George III tried to do it, taxed the 13 colonies without their consent, representation. Not happening. Over and over again, history is making a mistake you guys are doing right now. So here's my question. Taxation without representation. Guys, please don't hand the county over to the Tories. Do this properly. Question mark.
Councillor Beckett, is there a question there for you to answer? You can try.
I don't think any of us want to hand the current county council over to the Conservatives. We have seen the widest ranging consultation the GCP has ever done. And as I said before, it is incumbent on us to look at what that says. People are able to give their representations. You being here today is your representation. We have seen however many people around talking to us, sharing their issues. And I think all of that requires us to look carefully, to think carefully, and to take this matter incredibly seriously, which is what it deserves. This is not a simple issue. And I don't think distilling it down to simple issues is the way forwards.
Yeah, a point of order, Chairman. It's to follow on from what was said earlier. Councillor Lentell had 28 seconds left on the clock to get to his question, and there's a briefing beforehand. They had 2 minutes to get to the question. I don't understand, like Councillor Tierney doesn't, why they're interrupted before the end as they get to their question.
Because, Councillor... Okay, so let me repeat the answer I gave earlier. The Constitution allows members of the public to answer a question in 2 minutes. Yeah? If it gets to the end of 2 minutes, I don't want to have to cut the members of the public off without giving them the opportunity to ask their question. So it was a courtesy to all of the speakers for me to remind them to ask their question before the end of their time elapsed. That is the fairest way of dealing with this. I do not wish to get into a situation of imposing arbitrary limits on some speakers and some question askers and not to others. So I'm going to enforce those. I've been very clear to everybody here. I've spoken to all the questioners to tell them that I'm going to enforce the 2 minutes strictly. So it's up to the questioner to answer a simple question inside 2 minutes is not a lot to ask. So again, I'll refer you to the Constitution, but I am following that to the letter as I always do. Thank you for your question. Mr. Stamp, I'm sorry for that interruption. Could you please ask your question? You have 2 minutes and then 1 minute for a supplementary question if you so choose.
Don't you think it's funny that the only people who are happy for the consultation are the minority who are wanting to impose this new tax? By the minority, I mean 19%, according to the latest polls. Yes, 81% of us stand against this. So why are the 19% in favour of a consultation? I know. They think they know, as you know, as we all know, that the only way you're able to bypass democracy is to force this through by appearing to listen to the people. This is not democracy. You, all of you here, you, our elected leaders know it. You have a duty to defend the democratic process. Not a single one of you stood for election on this issue, as been said earlier. You have no mandate and therefore do not have the authority to make a decision for us. Do you really want to be responsible further down the line for making this decision on our behalf? I wouldn't, not for all the tea in China. Given the gravity of the proposal and the lack of public trust in the consultation, do the council not agree that the only decent, moral and democratic decision open to them is to grant the people their right to vote on this contentious issue, the issue ever discussed in this chamber?
Councillor Beckett.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And thank you for coming and asking your question. I actually thought you were going to ask a question about foster carers, but that's fine.
No, that's because that was time 3 minutes.
Okay. Okay, no problem. But thank you for coming along and asking your question. It is really vital that we have everybody engaged. Originally, I believed you were raising an issue about foster carers, and it is an incredibly important part to talk about is people with disabilities. and how they are affected by this. I hear constantly of issues of people being affected with disabilities from a lack of public transport, or to parking issues for blue badge holders, pavement parking affecting the blind, all the way up to how busy streets can overwhelm children suffering from autism. These are all things that need to be carefully considered. One of the big strengths of referenda is that they treat everyone voting equally. It is also one of their biggest weaknesses. Referenda are notoriously bad at considering the needs of minority groups, as we've just highlighted with disabled people. Is it right that an able-bodied person who only visits Cambridge once a week gets the same voice as somebody who's disabled and lives and works in the city? Is it right that a 17-year-old reliant on public transport to get to an apprenticeship gets no voice at all in a referendum? What about somebody living in Saffron Walden but caring for somebody in the city? Again, they would get no vote in a referendum. So whilst I understand the desire for direct democracy, and we're about to have a big debate on this, be aware that referenda can lead to some of the very groups that we care about the most, the groups that we're trying to protect, to become marginalised and excluded.
So you have 1 minute to ask a supplementary question if you choose.
Well, I do thank you for all the disability parts that you said in that, because I've got Parkinson's, so I do have a disability. But okay, then would you mind explaining to me something? The consultation could be completed by anybody in the whole wide world. And that has been proved by IT consultants. IT consultants have verified that it is completely impossible to filter out all the multiple entries because of this. The data being used by the decision makers is not reliable for that fact. So you're talking about the people who just live around. What about the people all over the world, you know, who voted in it, who you know, went for the consultation? Given the information, do the council not agree that the only way is for a referendum and risk making the wrong decision for the wrong and due and poor information? I was here 2 weeks ago when I heard about Jerry Bird and all the things that happened to her, and I didn't know any of that. And that really worries me about all you councillors making a decision today, and that could all happen.
Time's up, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
You've asked your question, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again. And the point about Councillor Bird is well heard. I don't know if you're aware, but after Mill Road, all of us that voted in favour of it had our public details shared online, with people being encouraged to come around to our houses and have it out with us. That's not what we should be doing in public society. It is really important that we all talk about this. This is a really challenging issue. It really is, and I believe that. So we do really need to consider it really, really carefully, and that needs to be done with people being careful and actually listening to each other. Quickly, to come back to your point about people voting from all over the world, that's actually a slight specialist subject of mine. I used to be an IT security professional. All I used to do is doing those sorts of things. So there are very many ways that you can look to exclude those and to look at where people have voted from and to take out multiple responses. Very happy to do that. The GCP will no doubt be looking very carefully at the data to make sure that it is an accurate reflection of what people believe, and they will be doing an awful lot of analysis on it. It is within our bounds, and we should be looking at that data, listening to all of those voices and analysing it, and then us taking the very, very difficult decisions forwards after that. It isn't going to be an easy decision for any of us, but we need to be doing it carefully and considered. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public questions.